Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell. I'm having a great day here on a Wednesday with Song Choi, my friend of many years. He's the Assistant Dean of the College of Engineering. Welcome to the show, Song.
How you doing, Jay?
All right.
Good
Lovely,
to see you
lovely
as always.
To have you here. So we always talk about education on Wednesday at noon, and I'd like to do that today with you.
Sounds
That's
good.
why we're calling this show Engineering Education in Hawaii. That's what we're talking about today.
That sounds specific to me.
Now, as the Assistant Dean of the College of Engineering, you're kind of responsible for that, aren't you?
We see a lot of it, promoting a lot of it, trying to get students excited about engineering, STEM, all the other components that go to it.
So what's the model? In other words, this hypothetical graduate of the College of Engineering, what does he look like? What does he sound like? What are his, characteristics?
So the optimal model would be some student that is extremely good in mathematics, extremely good in theory, extremely...
What's theory?
Theory, the physics, the chemistry, the biology, whatever you put in to make that engineering
The
happen.
standard science courses.
That's right, that's
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
So, and then of course, you have the hands-on aspect. You want the perfect engineer to have the mathematical ability, the theoretical ability, and the hands-on ability. Because you want them to be able to make something, right? So, I mean, for example, technology, that's a pen. People think, that's like way back, that's not technology. Well, remember, this was high-tech one time in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So,
For those of us who have a few years on us,
well, so they say. and of course, that's why we want the students to be able to make something. Of course, there's another aspect to it that I think many people have forgotten, and that is the articulation of ideas to other people.
I mean, speaking.
Well, hand sign language, whatever,
Whatever it is,
anything.
communicating.
Any type
Communicating.
of communication.
Okay.
So written, verbal, if it requires, hand gesturing, that's fine too. But some form where I can get an idea from my little brain to you, so you can give me your wallet and I can go have a good time.
Sure.
But isn't that what we do all the time when we have discussions with the state or federal governments and we're trying to implement new technologies to better our lives, be more effective, be more efficient in terms of our work, our play, whatever, be Socrates or Aristotle, so we can sit on the clouds and have every other robot take care of all the menial work for us? That's
A footnote
what it's
on
about.
that. Don't you think, I'm just worth a moment digression, don't you think that's the human condition for everything? Whatever you do, you have to articulate
Yes.
your thought process and
Yes.
your product, so
Yes.
to speak. And if you can't do that, if you want to sit in a carrel at the basement of the library all your life, I suppose you can get away with it.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
most of us have to go out in the street and express ourselves.
That's right. So, I mean, if we talk about it from a different profession, let's say the law profession, everybody understands that law requires very good articulation and commanded language. But shouldn't that be the case with anything that we do? We have to transmit what I want to you to get the right answer that I want.
So let's focus on that for a moment.
Sure.
How do you teach them to articulate?
The articulation is learned process. I think all those speech classes, elementary, middle, high school classes where they tell you to stand in front and talk about yourself, I think you need more of that. It's a habit forming thing. You got to shed those fears about that 2,000 people in the crowd watching you and saying, "Oh, he has no idea what he's talking about." You have to get around that fear, and if you can do
important.
that, get over that fear. And people have always talked about, "Oh, but I'm so nervous when I do something." Playing sports and everything. If you don't get that bit nervous when you are going into a game or getting ready to give a presentation or do a show, right?
You're not going to do your best.
You're not going to do your best, number one. And maybe it's time to switch your profession because you're probably bored.
Right.
Isn't
You have
that
to have
the
a
case?
challenge,
Right.
sure.
Everything needs to be a challenge. And if that challenge disappears, I think we lose the edge. And the whole purpose of education and continuously learning something is to meet that challenge head on and make sure you have all the information you need to transmit what you want to somebody else.
You know, about halfway through my law career, I realized this point you're making. And I looked around and I looked at the executives, the successful professionals, the people, the business people doing business on Bishop Street. And I realized that all of them had one thing in common. They could express themselves. And, you know, unless you are able to do that in business and in everything else, you're not realizing your potential. And if you want to, you know, play the game, you've got to be able to do that. There is no choice about it. And if it means extra work for you to go take another course, go to a class, whatever it is, concentrate on it. You have to do that if you want to be successful in this life.
I agree 100%. You know, you, myself, I'm sure everybody else in your audience right now remembers our mother or father or grandparents telling you, if you work hard, you will succeed. Little twist to that, I think it should be expressed as, if you work hard intelligently, you will succeed. And I think that gets you someplace, like you're saying. Hey, if speaking is not your forte, go practice. And practice to a point where you can go up in front of a group of people and say, this is what I want because this is what I have.
Right.
And that's
Sell
very
it.
important. Yeah.
Sell it. Sell something. So, I mean, you know, I don't like to use the word sell, but that's pretty much what it is. So now I'm sort of a dweeb. I come to you after high school. I have a slide rule in this pocket. I'm into, you know, the most arcane details of technology. That's what I spend my 2 o'clock in the morning in. I have a computer in my bedroom, you know.
Sounds good.
And I can't talk to anybody because I'm locked into, you know, the social media world and the browser world. So you say to me, Jay, you know, we have 4 years to model you as someone who not only knows engineering, but who can talk the language and convince people that it's the right thing. So what do you say to him? There's no speech courses at the College of Engineering, right? What do you say to him?
We have introduction courses that require that they do projects and they have to do presentations. So that's one form of getting the students to come out of that shell. But the other aspect is we have to understand that we live in a very dynamic society. Our understanding of communication may be changing. Maybe 50 years from now, what these kids that you call dweebs or whatever with this slide rule, which is, this is, by the way, the new slide rule. This is a new slide rule.
Giving away my age here.
Is that things change, things morph. Maybe some of these students that are very good at social media aspects are already involved with that new communication process. And maybe it's just you and me that's falling behind so far that we don't know what's going on.
Could be.
You know, I mean, I would say that having these smartphones, the best thing is I can be in touch with my work 24 hours a day.
Isn't that nice?
No. The worst thing is you are working 24 hours a day, but you're only getting paid for 8.
Right. You know, this reminds me, though, Song, of the many times I've seen you at the science fair. Because the one thing that has always impressed me about the science fair, and I'm sure it has impressed you at the science fair, are these kids, and sometimes they're, you know, grade school or junior high school, and you say, you know, what's your project? Tell me the hypothesis, tell me, you know, the reasoning, tell me the methodology, tell me your conclusion, and they're able to do it. They're able to, in fact, sometimes they do it, I don't understand what they're saying. They're brilliant, and they're not shy. And somebody in that junior high school is telling them how to do this, and it is part of the science project, and it's what gets them to the regionals and the nationals and the globals, for that matter.
That's right.
So it's proof again, at least in science, especially in science, that they have got to be able to tell you what they're doing. Yeah.
So I look at science and engineering, and I don't think there's as big of a difference as people keep putting into this science and engineering tug of war. You create a hypothesis, you come up with an idea. You come up with some solutions. You come up with a way to collect the data. You try those solutions. It doesn't work, so you go back and formulate some new ideas. They both seem like the same process to me. You come up with something, you analyze it, you test it, doesn't work, oh, go back. Come up with another solution, test it, oh, doesn't work, go back. You know, you're eliminating aspects that are not going to work, so you are left with maybe less choices that may work.
Yeah.
Which is, in my opinion, in science and engineering, very
Well, what do
similar.
they say? Every scientist is an engineer.
And every engineer,
is a scientist.
I agree 100%. And you know, going back to the science fair, oh, by the way, a pitch for science fair starting next month all the way through March. We will have the district fairs and the state fair. So if you want to judge and want to let students know about your expertise, let us know, and we'll get you in there to help the students out.
That's great. An aside is that Song has been a judge, a professional judge, if you will, and for this he gets big bucks.
Yeah,
At the
it's
science
called
fair.
zero.
Forever.
Yeah.
And he's been a guiding principle, a guiding light at the science fair, which does so much for so many people and for their families. It's hard to describe the value of that institution to our state, actually.
You know, the whole purpose of all these, let's say STEM-related events, but not only STEM-related events, the art shows, the music concerts, is to give students the opportunity to be in front of a crowd and perform and let everybody understand how competent and confident they are.
They are in an area of expertise.
That's right.
To have an expertise of some kind.
That's right. Whether it's sports, art, academics, if you know how to succeed and be successful in one, I don't think it's that difficult to be a success in another one.
No, I think there are many things where, you know, it seems more difficult than it really is. For example, taking breaks.
Aloha, my name is Jim Sean, and I'm host of a show called Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. Each week, live streaming at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii, we interview people who have special insights into education, from early education through K-12, all the way through higher education and beyond. Both public and private are areas we're interested in. We dig deeper. We try to find out what it's really like to be involved in making change, advocating for it, how you reform, what people's philosophies are in reforming it. As I said, we're live streaming every Wednesday at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii. And later on, you can find these interviews on YouTube and on the Hawaii Educational Policy Center website. We hope you join us as many times as possible. Aloha. Aloha.
It was so easy to do that break. Thank you. We're back from the break. That's Sung Choi. He's the Assistant Dean of the College of Engineering at UH Manoa in Holmes Hall. And so we were talking about the model of the student that you want to graduate. And we talked about one part, which I think is important, the articulation part, but there are other more technical engineering parts. What are they?
Okay, so obviously the technical and the mathematical and the theoretical are the parts that we want the students to have confidence and competence in, right? People have said, what is a good age to start? I think any age is a good age to start. But if I was to look at our education system, we have our primary school, we have our middle school, we have our secondary school, and then we have our post-secondary school. I look at our primary school as an area where we should be exposing students to everything and anything. Because, you know, when you're young, and I'm sure you and I were the same, we're like sponges. We soak up knowledge. We have no idea what it's for, but we soak up knowledge and we say, wow, I know all these things. And in a way, it's a little bit of memorization. And I remember learning languages where I had no idea that a word that I learned was Japanese, because it came from a Korean grandmother. But later on, I found out it's a Japanese word. So that's okay. You know, we compartmentalize and categorize where they go.
Yeah.
When you get to the middle school, I think that's when you need to actually teach kids to learn something. So start preparing them to understand what they were exposed to. So not the
Retrospectively.
Full, yeah, retrospectively.
You meet them, say, at the interview or on day one in school, and you explain to them what they have been learning and what the relevance is. This is good. This is good.
Wouldn't that be an interesting thing?
Self-awareness
Yeah.
is what it is. Yeah.
So it's something that I think we do automatically, and as we get older, we do it more and more. It's called, a reflection of yourself as in a weekly basis, daily basis, a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if the kids are taught this, where they're exposed as elementary school students, they're taught basics as a middle school student. Now, when they get to the high school, and I look at high school almost as a preparation for them to go out into the world to fine-tune that little interest and skill that they've conjured up in their mind. If it happens to be an engineer, fine, you go to an engineering school. If it's mathematics, you go to a math-related school. If it's biology, go to that place that's got very good biology. If you want to be a technician, that's okay. You need to go to a school that centralizes and specializes in that. You know, as an engineer, the one group of people I could never do without are technicians. I can conjure up the greatest ideas, but I need somebody to help me make these things. I can make maybe 30%.
The fabrication part.
Fabrication part. I need to have the other 70% done by somebody else. So it is really a handshake between several levels, trying to create that one high-tech aspect, right? So to build a building, it's not one person building it, you have multiple people doing it. So in this way, if you can expose, teach, prepare, and by the time they get to their post-secondary education, they're looking at how to hone their skills.
You know, they always say there's one teacher, I mean, in a successful life, there's one teacher along the way that changed the way you think, that pointed you in the direction of something you ultimately adopted as the most important thing in your life. And I'm sensing, you're there on the firing line, but I'm sensing this happens a lot in high school.
I think so.
One teacher inspires you and you carry that forever. Yeah.
So I think it happens often, maybe at middle school, where somebody or a teacher that you remember grabs you and says, Jay, you need to study. And that might have an impact. But in high school, whether it's athletics, the arts, music, or painting, or just academics, somebody inspires you into looking into different aspects.
Yeah.
And then, of course, hopefully that translates also into when you're at the university, and somebody at the university can help you dig that hole a little bit deeper so you can become more proficient in what you're doing.
You know, this reminds me of another element of that science fair business. And Neil Atabara, who ran the science fair for a
Yes,
while,
that's right.
still very active in it, talks about how it gave him a confidence that he didn't have. He was a country boy from Hilo. He didn't have a lot of confidence himself, but the science fair made him confident. And it put him in the best schools in the country. It made him one of the best doctors in the state, this confidence. And I'm thinking that the kid who comes in and who you do a retrospective on and you find that, yes, he's been pointed one way, that he's interested, then it's a question of like reinforcement. So you say to this kid, you say, you're really good at this.
That's right.
You have a talent in it. You're built for it. And somehow you communicate that thought, and then he adopts that. And now he believes that he has confidence. And then the process is complete, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
must
right.
see that all the time.
Well, if we were to look at it from a sports analogy, let's take the one that's really close and dear to Hawaii right now, Marcus Mariota. Somebody along the way must have empowered him. And that I think is a great word, whoever thought about it, to use with all these students. Empower that confidence in him, and that said, basically, if you work hard intelligently, and you keep your nose to that thing that you're trying to accomplish, you will succeed.
And you will be justified in
Yes,
being
that's right.
confident. Yeah. But
And that
one of the-
confidence goes a long way.
One of the things that I get, I mean, I had a friend who, his kid was in junior high school, and he did spend 2 o'clock in the morning in his room with his computer, and it was games, and it was silly things. I mean, I say silly, maybe not, but and he was wedded to the computer at a time, and I'm sure it still happens, when kids were wedded to the computer. And when he finishes that, he comes out and he says, "Dad, you know, I know a lot about computers, and therefore I know a lot about science and technology and engineering." But it isn't necessarily so. His father said, "I'm taking the computer out of your room. And I'm putting a curfew on you. You
Okay.
can't be in there at 2 o'clock in the morning playing games. I'm not
Okay.
going to let you do that."
Okay.
So query, does a kid who understands the computer business and social media and does what his peers do, is that really qualifying him for your program?
That's a yes and no to that. You know, a student that is engrossed by this attraction to computer games, or any type of arcade type games, and they are looking at something beyond just the strategy of playing and winning the game, I'm sure we'll have a huge in-depth knowledge of how those programs are written and how to maybe beat that system. And I think that's a great way to understand the theories behind the technology that he's playing with. So that's okay. Now, if somebody's just playing games, that scares me a little bit, because that borders on addiction. And whether it's gambling, or whether it's drugs, or whether it's alcohol, or whether it's computer games, it's an addiction, and it may actually have a lot of withdrawal effects. And so I think there's a real touchy area that you got to look at when you're doing what the father did. I was having a discussion with the Department of Education, and we were talking about STEM. And I told them, you know, if you look at STEM, it should be that with the younger kids, we use the T as the hook, because the T should be on top, and it's the engineering that is the neck that
You must think
creates the
about this
STEM,
all day.
right? And it's the math and the science, and if we want to put the third part, English, arts, music, that make up the base foundation that produces this thing. And so we hope that the technology hooks them, and that by the time they get to high school, it gets flipped around, that they're learning the math, the science, English, art, music.
I think you know, I know your answer, but I recall a year or two ago there was a woman came around as a sort of guidance counselor, an expert guidance counselor in high schools. And her pitch was, you don't need to have a liberal arts, I mean, a general degree. You don't need all these courses in world history and language and Western civilization. You don't need that. You know, you need to have a trade school kind of, because that will suit you better, qualify you better in the world of today.
Okay.
I hear you on the other side of that question.
I'm on the other side of that for a very good reason, and I think you'll get a good tickle out of this. You remember the other saying where people used to say, be a jack of all trades? Well, I think that statement's great, except the jack of all trades, you're not doing anything. You should be a jack of all trades while being a master of one, right?
Right.
Now, the jack of all trade part is interesting and important, because the history, the arts, the music are all the things that feed in to make you creative. And without creativity, we're not getting anywhere. We have to the other thing I tell all these young kids is daydream. And so, when
I've heard you say that.
Yep. So, are we going to a break?
Okay. My guest knows better. We're going to have a break now.
Daydream.
Watch this.
Aloha, this is Alice V. Hagan from ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show is a bi-weekly show on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. We invite interesting people, entrepreneurs, fascinating leaders who contribute to the social economic well-being of our state. Please tune in to my show, Business Education Spotlight, ThinkTech Hawaii, bi-weekly, Thursday, 3 to 4 p.m. Aloha.
Aloha, this is Reg Baker, and I am the host of Business in Hawaii. We talk about positive stories of businesses in Hawaii, how they have been successful, and how they have overcome some of the obstacles that a lot of us encounter when we try to have a business here. And believe it or not, there are a number of positive stories here, and we want to talk to all of you. So we broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock, and it rebroadcasts again on Olelo Channel 54. So I sure hope to see you next time. Please tune in on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Bingo, we're back. Sung Choi, Assistant Dean of the College of Engineering, one of my favorite places in Manoa. And it's so nice to have you here, Sung.
Always welcome.
I remember being a judge one time in an engineering competition, and they all had real plans for real projects. And the judges were supposed to, decide what projects were best from an engineering point of view. I don't know how I got to be a judge, but I did, and I really enjoyed that. And one of the things that I carried forward from that is, if you're an engineer, you can do any engineering project. When you graduate from the College of Engineering, you may have to work harder at it, but if you follow the rules, apply the principles, dig down into your training, your 4 years of training there, you can build a major waterway.
Yeah.
You can build steel structures and do engineering on anything, really. It's just a question of applying yourself. Am I right?
I agree, 100%. Facts can be learned anywhere. So I look at all these things and people are talking about, why should I go to school? And I'm like, if you really want to just learn something, whether it's law or medicine or engineering, with the unlimited amount of resources we have out in the internet, in this virtual world, and you can get yourself to memorize and understand all these facts and theories and figures and equations, why should you go to school? Save your $250,000, go buy your house,
Really?
right? But the difference is, you have to remember, engineering, like a lot of things we do not only have one solution. We are trying to find the optimal solution for that day, for that period, for those different specifications that we're looking at.
You're trying to tell me it's an art, not a science.
It's an art with a lot of science behind it. And some math.
Okay.
So one of the things that's important that we were talking about at the beginning, the articulation, that's what I think you get the most of when you're at a school. You are having intelligent discussions with your classmates, your faculty, the staff that's there, maybe even some industry people that happen to come by. And it's the stimulation that you get from those discussions that helps you understand how to utilize those facts that you're talking about on building a bridge or the steel structures or how to make that robot. But those discussions are where the importance begins. And that is why these science fairs, robotics aspects, these robotics tournaments, the math counts, the science bowl, is really important.
Or the job fairs. I know you guys have job fairs. And it strikes me that your model graduate we've been talking about, he has to know the market for engineering skill.
Oh,
He
yes,
has to know
yes.
what the human race, what civilization, this country, any country, the state of civilization wants from him, and how he can deliver that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So a very good example. I'm having discussions with many of my students right now because they want to go to grad school. And many of them have just come in and just given me resumes and all this stuff. So I told them, maybe you guys should strategize on which schools you want to go to, because it's not just a random toss out there and you hope that it lands up in a bucket. You got to make sure you formulate it so it goes at that bucket and towards that bucket. And that takes, just like you said, finding out what the needs are and what you have that can fit those
And what the school has.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Nothing is random, I don't think. And I think that's why these students being exposed to the science fairs, the robot tournaments, the math counts, and all these aspects, the athletic tournaments, the music competition, is good for you because it's exposing the students to get that empowerment of confidence to do better at whatever they pursue.
This is only diagonally appropriate, but I remember going to, where was it? It was at the Institute for Astronomy Day. Okay, and they have a lot of mathematicians there. So I was making fun, and I said to this guy who claimed to be a mathematician, I said, do you love math? 'Cause I have trouble imagining that, but do you love math? And his answer, quick as a whip, was, doesn't everybody?
He's got a point.
So, it goes to engineering too. I mean, when I graduate, I see the world unfolding, before me. I know that the technology in the world, the engineering in the world, will evolve quickly, more quickly now than ever before.
That's
I
right.
know the skills I have. I know the thought process skills
That's
I
right.
have. And I'm confident, okay? And if you ask me, do you love engineering? Well, what's my answer?
Of course. Of course. There's no two ways around that, because I'm always looking at things and I'm trying to figure out, how could I be a little bit lazier and not do that? That's a typical Socrates, Aristotle answer, right? If I can get something to do all this stuff for me, I can sit there and do whatever I want. Go play soccer, go play music, go swim all day, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
Yeah, we all have our own taste down deep. Last question, okay? And that's this, and this sort of relates to our earlier discussion. So in the world today, we have the computer, and we have the engineering school, we have SOEST, we have Seymour, we have HIGP, we have all these scientific organizations around the campus. They all require computer processing. And we have the David Lasner building over there with all that computer processing.
The IT building.
Excuse me. Okay, and we have a computer science department. And the question is, do we focus the computer programming, work in the individual schools where it must come up all the time, or do we sort of outsource it to the computer science department? Which is the way education is going as far as engineering and computer science?
So my perspective on this is, in a way, very simple. My background is robotics, so it's a subset of enginering, computer science, various other
Many
little art
disciplines,
things.
many
That's right.
collaborators,
That's right. But I came in from the mechanical engineering aspect, so I make robots. But I realized when I was making robots, I need to know a little bit about electrical engineering, because there are so many damn wires that were going through this to power all these sensors and actuators. And of course, there was that stupid thing called a battery, right? So we had to work and get some information on that. And then what we realized is we can't control any of this stuff if we don't have this thing called computer science or programming. So I think computer science is becoming similar to what we take for granted, and that's language. Like mathematics. Mathematics, in my opinion, is one of the most universal languages you can find. The other one that's, I think, more universal than mathematics is music. Because everybody seems to have the same type of emotional feelings and understandings when they hear certain music.
Yeah, it's that left brain
It's
thing.
that left
It
brain.
feeds both.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the mathematic part is, whether you are from Russia, China, Argentina, United States, you look at a mathematical equation, you say, oh, I know what that means. Another universal language. I think computer science / programming is going the same direction. It's one of these skills that you're going to always have if you are especially going to be in this arena of technology development.
Yeah.
And technology development is not only the engineers, it's the computer scientists, the mathematicians, the biologists, the botanists, everybody that's out there, right? And I think that's why that common core that comes to play with all these disciplines now is computer science. Interesting story. I was talking to a botanist, and they do experiments where they go out and they measure how big the tree's grown or the plant's grown every 3 days, 4 days, a week.
It's a long way from mechanical engineering.
It's not what we do, right?
Right.
So they were asking us, is there a way to automate this? So we said, well, why don't you just put a camera on it and just take pictures of it? So they were like, oh, we can do that? I said, yeah, we could put a ruler next to it and just every day.
There it is.
So now these guys are getting, instead of one data point every 30 days, 30 million data points in one day. So they come back and they said, we have another problem. We have too many data points. So it's just a funny story, because what we're understanding is that data is something that we've always been looking for. And one of the big areas that's a major now, a research area, is the understanding and the reception and the deciphering of big data.
Yeah.
And whether it's in the finance district, or in the botany district, or in any engineering or science district, it's becoming something that we need to understand.
Yeah.
So I think computer science
Yeah.
is becoming another language like what we use to communicate.
What I get out of that is that computer science will benefit all other sciences. And they all benefit each other, but computer science will facilitate your research. It will facilitate the speed at which your research can be done, the conclusions can be made. So it's valuable for everybody. The other point I get out of it, and this is, I guess, the closing point for our discussion, is that when you get out as this perfect model of an engineering graduate, it's not like you're locked in.
No.
Because there's such an incredible exchange from chemistry to physics to astronomy. I mean, it's all connected. And so you can get out of engineering. I mean, you can graduate with an engineering degree and go this way or that way. And they can go this way or that way. It's all connected in your life and your career, isn't it so?
Yeah, so I have a very simple definition for that. I look at a Bachelor of Science degree as that main key to get into a building or your house. And then any other room that you need to get into, you need to get another key. And that key can only be found, bought, whatever, through another degree or experienced by working someplace. And you can hone that into any which way you want to go. If I wanted to be a biomedical engineer, I don't see why you wouldn't have gotten an engineering degree, go out and maybe study some physiology, maybe even get a medical degree, and then kind of lump that together and say, I'm going to make $6 million man, or Jamie Summers or whatever.
So the house and the world is your oyster.
That's right.
All you need is to get in the door.
That's right. That's that first door you got to get into. And once you get into that door, anything else is part of that daydreaming process.
Thank you, Song.
Oh, you're
Song
very
Choi.
welcome.
So
Anytime.
enjoy these discussions. We're going to have you back soon.
Anytime you want.
Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha.